breathe underwater.
Today, I'm going to talk about something that I experienced myself. It's a little bit removed from the criminal aspects of the things that I talk about mostly, but I think it's a good story to tell. And I don't know what it is. It's something that's pushing me to share this story with y'all. And I don't know, maybe it's meant for somebody out there to hear, but I hope you enjoy it. But this is one of those stories that it's one of those pivotal moments in my life that put me on a different path. Not all at once, like a lot of people think, it wasn't one of those Disney moments where you have oh man, this is it. And then you change your life and you start doing everything in the right way. It wasn't like that. It was one of those moments that made me really take a hard look at who I am and who I was trying to be and who I wanted to be. And before I get deep into it, let me say this too. I'm still a little sick, y'all. So you might hear me coughing from time to time. I don't know what it is that I caught, but it's a bad boy. But it's got my throat messed up a little bit. I'm sure you can tell in my voice. So bear with me on that. But this story happened years ago, man. I was at Turner Center back in the early 2000s, somewhere, well, mid 2000s, about 2008, 2009. And I was still involved in a lot of things, even though I was not in rotation at that point. I had retired just a few years before that. I retired in '08, early '08, but I was still teetering. And a lot of people were still trying to get me to come back into the fold. And I was resisting that because I had gotten used to my independence. I had gotten used to not dealing with everybody else's problems. I could focus more on what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do things, right? But what happened to me really changed my life. And it was one night I was in the room and I had laid down to go to sleep. I had just gotten off the cell phone talking to a friend of mine, and I handed the phone to my cellie and told him, make sure you put it up when you're done. I'm getting ready to go to sleep. So he assured me that everything would be okay and all of this and that, which he had done that before, so I didn't have any reason to worry. So I went to sleep. And I don't know how long it was that I was knocked out, but when I went to sleep, I had a nightmare. And in that nightmare, it was just like total darkness. Um, I was aware of what was going on. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel, saying that I was in this darkness. It was just all around me. And I couldn't really see anything. It wasn't about, how some people say you see, you might teleport to your hometown or you might go to heaven or hell or something like that. It wasn't like that for me anyway. What I saw was total darkness and it was cold. And it made me feel a fear that I have never felt in my life. And when I woke up, I was soaking wet and I was shivering. But I wasn't hot. I was cold. And I stood up and I looked to see if my cellie was awake, and he was up there uh, still on the phone, but he had his head covered up, and I could tell he was still on the phone because I could see the light bouncing off the wall. So I knew he was still up. So I got up and I walked quietly, I didn't want to disturb him, and I paced back and forth in the room for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then he finally rolled over and looked at me. He said, "Seth, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." But he just kept staring at me. And I'm like, "What you looking at?" He said, "You don't look okay." And like I said, I was soaking wet. And I still had on my t-shirts and my shorts, but I was drenched. And you know how when you're wet, your clothes stick to your body and stuff like that, right? Well, my t-shirt was just all tattered and stuck to my body from the sweat. He was like, man, you need to change shirts, man, before you get sick. So I looked in the mirror and I saw how bad I looked, right? And I had this look on my face. It was just fear. And I knew what I was feeling was fear. I just didn't understand why I was feeling that. I had just woken up, like I say, and all I experienced in this dream, it was just total darkness, nothing but darkness. So I changed my shirt and I asked my seller, I said, you done with the phone? He was like, yeah, I'm done with the phone. And I said, let me use it real quick before you put it up. So he gave me the phone. I got back in the bed and I called my uncle. And when I got my uncle on the phone, I told him about the dream. And he sat there and he listened to me intently. Now, you got to keep in mind, you know, when you receive a phone call at like 3 and 4 in the morning from the penitentiary, you know, your family, they get a little upset because they're wondering why you called, and then they're afraid at the same time because nobody calls that late unless you're up to something or something is going wrong or so on and so forth. But my uncle, he was my go-to. You know, he was the one that could always answer my questions and soothe me, you know what I'm saying, make me feel okay when I wasn't feeling okay. And when I told him about my dream, he asked me, he said, what do you think it meant? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what it means. I had no idea at that time, you know, what I was supposed to get from that. So we sat there for maybe another 30 minutes going back and forth and talking. And then all of a sudden, I just broke down and started crying. And I told my uncle, that I didn't want to let that be the end of my life, to see nothing. And he did what, you know, somebody that loves you is supposed to do. He told me that everything was gonna be okay, but I had to pay for what I had done. And I told him I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. And he told me that I wouldn't be there for the rest of my life. But he did tell me that I would be there for a long time. And I said, how do you know that? And he told me about my big mama, you know, my great grandmother. And, you know, I don't know if you believe this or not, you know, but, you know, my grandmother was known to be psychic. And she had told my uncle, my grandparents, and everybody in my family that when I went to trial that I was going to be found guilty, I wouldn't get the death penalty, and that I was going to be in prison for a long time, but I would get out. And when I got out, that I was going to do great things. In fact, she told him before I got out, I was going to do great things. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me this before? And he said, well, it never really came up and I never really knew how to even approach the topic. But he says, I think that, you know, tonight you need to hear that. You're not going to be in prison for the rest of your life. And that's when I started to realize that that dream wasn't meant to scare me. That dream was meant to get my attention. And I wanted to share that with y'all because, well, I consider y'all to be my family now, part of my family now, and I didn't want to keep telling stories about things that more related to crime to try to deter you from this lifestyle, I wanted to give you something that was deeply personal to me. And this is one of those stories that set me on a different course, a different path. And I don't think we have the courage to share those types of stories like we're supposed to because we're afraid of what the reaction is going to be. And for some reason today, I'm not afraid of what the reaction is going to be. I feel more empowered at this time in my life than I've ever felt before because I'm living my life in an honest way. And that's what I want for everybody that listens to my show. I know that things don't always seem to be working out the way that you want them to work out, but let how you approach the problems that you have in your life be done in a virtuous way, in a way that is going to help you and the people that are going to be affected by the decision you make, whatever it may be. Because when we start to make decisions that are going to hurt people, thinking that it's going to help us, we're only hurting ourselves and them even more than you can imagine. And that's what that darkness represented for me. All the pain and all the things that I had done to people to find myself in prison, that's what that darkness represented. And it scared the hell out of me. And I don't want that for anybody. Anybody. So I just wanted to share that with you and ask you a question. Have you ever had one of those moments in your life that when things seem darkest? And if you have, I'm asking you not to be afraid of it. And if you find yourself in a spot, re-examine that dream so that you can get a better understanding of what it is that you're supposed to be doing with your life right now. Because you only get so many opportunities to get it right. You only get so many opportunities to get it right, y'all. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I've been trying to breathe underwater.